Did you know that the combination of Genco Abondando, Vito Corleone, and Luca Brasi was seen as an unbeatable force in the criminal underworld? Each of them brought unique skills and qualities that complemented one another perfectly. At the height of their power, the Corleone family seemed untouchable. In the underworld of crime, no other clan possessed the same combination of power, strategy, and respect, and the Corleones stood upon three pillars of the old guard: Luca Brasi, Genco Abondando, and Vito Corleone. Luca Brasi was the invisible sword hanging over their rivals, his name spread from mouth to mouth, and his reputation preceded him. It was said that even Al Capone's men hesitated in front of Luca, because of his brutality and his blind loyalty to Vito. In times of war, Luca didn't need to kill to win. It was enough for him to appear. A look, a gesture, his mere presence was enough to silence conspiracies. He was the very symbol of absolute fear, the living proof that to defy the Corleones was to sign one's own death sentence. But fear alone cannot sustain an empire. For that, Vito relied on Genco Abondando, his consigliere. He was not just an advisor, but a true strategist of the old Sicilian school. Genco had the rare gift of reading rivals like an open book. Before an enemy even thought of attacking, Genco had already foreseen the move, prepared the response, and blocked the threat. It was as if he had eyes everywhere, as if the very streets whispered secrets to him. With him, the Corleones always seemed one step ahead, crossing through wars with rival families without ever leaving room for internal betrayals or external ambushes. And at the center of this machinery stood Vito Corleone. His natural leadership united strategy and intimidation under a single banner. Vito did not need to raise his voice. His calm, his diplomacy, and his sense of justice created an incontestable authority. He was the balance between Luca's armed might and Genco's calculating mind. Together, the three of them sent a clear message to the world of crime: this family cannot be defeated. But time began to corrode this empire. With Genco's illness and death, the strategic heart of the family weakened. It was then that rivals, Barzini and Sollozzo, perceived something unprecedented. The Corleones were no longer invincible. Where caution and fear had once reigned, cracks now appeared, and for the first time in years, enemies dared to plan bold moves against New York's most powerful clan. Eliminating them had been unthinkable while Genco was alive. The consigliere would have anticipated every step, foreseen every trap, and never allowed Luca to fall into such an obvious snare. But with Genco gone, Sollozzo saw his chance. He staged a theater of trust, feigned loyalty, offered a toast, and used cordiality as bait. And then, from behind, the ambush closed in. The man who for years had been the shadow of death fell strangled, victim of a blow that was only possible because the Corleones had lost their strategic oracle. The fall of Luca was not just the death of a man, it was the destruction of the family's psychological shield. If even Luca Brasi could be killed, no one was safe. Soon after, another crack appeared: the betrayal of Paulie Gatto, Vito's trusted driver. Before, under Genco's watch, Paulie would never have dared to sell himself. The consigliere had his eyes on every suspicious move, and no one would risk such disloyalty. But without Genco, and with Vito wounded, Paulie felt free to cross the line. The family that once inspired fear now inspired doubt, and that doubt opened the door to betrayal. These bold moves culminated in the attack against the Don himself, an assassination attempt that, in other times, would have been impossible, but now, with Genco dead, Luca eliminated, and Paulie corrupted, even Vito Corleone was vulnerable. It was the breaking point. The era of the old guard was coming to an end. The wall that once seemed unbreakable was beginning to crumble, stone by stone. Years later, Frank Pentangeli would summarize that old period as a time of unity, comparing it to the Roman Empire. And indeed, the triad formed by Vito, Genco, and Luca represented a perfect balance of charisma, strategy, and intimidation. But with the fall of those pillars, the Corleone family entered a new era, colder, more calculating, but also more vulnerable to internal betrayals and to Michael's growing isolation. Thus ended the era of the old guard, a time when the Corleones were not only respected, they were feared as invincible. With the collapse of the old guard's pillars, the Corleone family was forced to reinvent itself. The era of Vito, Genco, and Luca, marked by unity and invincibility, had come to an end. in its place rose a new structure, formed by Tom Hagen, Al Neri, and Michael Corleone, three loyal, competent men, but ones who carried weaknesses the past had never known. Tom was not a man of the mafia by blood. Adopted by Vito, he became a lawyer and gave the family unmatched legal and political intelligence. Under his guidance, the Corleones expanded into legitimate businesses, penetrated state institutions, and built a sophisticated web of influence. But Tom had a weakness: he was not made for war. He lacked Genco's Sicilian instinct, the ability to foresee ambushes and detect betrayals before they happened. Tom thrived in times of peace, but in times of violence his excessive rationality made him overly cautious. If Luca Brasi had been the legendary terror, Al Neri represented a new kind of violence. He was not a thug, but a cold, calculating assassin. He slipped in and out of execution scenes like a ghost, leaving only bodies on the ground. His efficiency was vital for Michael's consolidation as Don. But Neri lacked Luca's almost mythical aura. He did not inspire collective fear in the underworld. He inspired instead a silent threat, known only to those standing at death's door. He was lethal, but not a universal figure of intimidation. At the top of this new structure stood Michael, cold, calculating, and disciplined. He possessed precisely what Sonny lacked: patience and strategic efficiency. He commanded like a ruthless general, never hesitating to eliminate friends, rivals, or even family to protect his power. But Michael did not inherit Vito's charisma. Where his father bound men together with loyalty and respect, Michael ruled through fear and distrust. His coldness kept the empire strong, but corroded its unity from within. It was under his command that Tessio betrayed, Fredo faltered, and the capos began to fear him more than they respected him. Tom Hagen embodied reason and diplomacy. Al Neri, silent violence. Michael, relentless discipline. This triad kept the Corleones in power, but at the cost of something precious: internal cohesion. If in the era of Vito, Genco, and Luca there had been trust and absolute loyalty, in Michael's era calculation, silence, and constant suspicion reigned. The new empire was strong, but cold, respected, but not revered, capable of winning wars, but incapable of preserving the unbreakable unity of the old guard, as Frank had said. The past seemed like a Roman Empire, an era of brothers, unity, and honor. The present, under Michael, was different, an efficient machine, but surrounded by shadows of betrayal. Thus was the new generation of the Corleones, capable of consolidating power, but marked by the absence of charisma, of collective fear, and of the blind trust that had once made the family an invincible empire. If you enjoyed this analysis and want to discover more hidden stories behind The Godfather and other great films, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. That really helps strengthen our family here on YouTube and motivates me to keep bringing more content like this.